I just want to recap, if you didn't get the start of the program, I talked about how a lot of the big corporates now, this is something that Paul Murray pointed out with great insight on his show last night at 8 o'clock now, Sunday to Thursday, and he pointed out how the character of Australia Day has changed because big companies aren't into it. And then the Australian today pointed out that neither of the big airlines really pushed Australia Day this year, which is a big turnaround. I showed this little clip from what Qantas was doing just 5 years ago. Bit smolchy and all that sort of stuff, but they used to serve lamingtons and all that. Now, no, Australia Day is either to be ignored or apologised for. Now, the bloke who really nailed this last night on Sky News was the great Paul Murray on Paul Murray Live. Great to have you on the program, Paul.
Thank you, great man. Little known fact, I was the bloke who was in the kangaroo suit. That's why I had a big bottom half, you may have noticed.
Yeah, look, I thought it was really important what you said last night because back when I was a kid, all the companies helped to drive this. Why do we all have flags on our cars? Because when we pulled into the service station, they were giving them out, you know. Yeah. Everybody was giving out the stuff. When you went to the shops, there was Australian flags everywhere. You don't see that anymore because they're too scared of the woke brigade.
Well, absolutely. It's part of the delegitimising of the event where, as we know, we're about to hit Chinese New Year, which now sensitively called Lunar New Year. You will see in your local shopping centre, you will see recognitions of that, as you should, because that's what's appropriate to that day of the year, as it is with Easter, Father's Day, Mother's Day, all the rest of it, right? But even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, major companies knew this was what you do at the end of January. And poll after poll may show that 60% of their customers recognise the day, and no one thinks of it as a white pride day. They all know what the day is now. Yet, because the cool kids, for want of a better term, have all turned around and said, don't you say Happy Australia Day.
Yeah, so this is the other key point you made. They're out of sync with their customer base. 2/3 of Australians, including many Indigenous Australians and all immigrants from every corner of the planet, they love Australia Day on January the 26th. But the people who are the tail wagging the dog are the online activists.
Well, and also you see that, I mean, literally 2 years ago, you had Australian flag bunting all over places like Woolies and Coles. Now, as soon as they decide not to do it, think of all of those different locations. Think of all the different service stations. Even think about, the newspapers that used to have the flag that you could, put in the front window on the Sunday beforehand. None of it happens. This is a two-prong approach, right? I think that state and federal government have to work together to take back Australia Day. Yep. So that's it. No more local councils. We're going to have capital city and key regional things in the morning, like Anzac Day. We'll pay for them. Those will be the TV pictures. Local MPs should do the citizenship stuff. And a company that wants to connect with the majority of Australia should back in the day.
Well, absolutely, and they do it well. They do it with citizenship ceremonies and welcome to country ceremonies. We cover all bases. I tell you what, we've got to push the companies. We've got to push the companies all year so that next year they get involved. It should be good for them. They shouldn't be embarrassed of it. I think we'll show some of these, some of the social media posts of the AFL footy club, some of them near and dear to my heart, basically apologising for the day. And the great Mason Cox, the American import to Collingwood, asked today whether he was going to become an Australian citizen. He said he's going to wait and not do it on Australia Day because that's insulting to people.
But hang on, 17,000 people. Like, I think the best thing about Australia Day is that people join the club that we're lucky enough to be born in.
Spot on.
Like a footy stadium of people yesterday joined Australia. How cool was it seeing on the 6 p.m. news or in the newspapers and online the pictures of people of all different backgrounds holding little Aussie flags? Again, there isn't a thinking human being in 2022 who doesn't understand what the date means, who doesn't understand what was there before, but also isn't advantaged by the modernity that comes after it.
Mate, you're so right. I've never been in organisations that are more egalitarian than footy clubs. I've played footy with priests and criminals, with people from every corner of the globe speaking different languages, and you're all equal on the footy field. And yet we have all the footy clubs apologising for Australia Day.
Well, as you just mentioned about sort of the interesting sort of, moral pretzel and Twitter reaction that'll be to the AFLW player, right? It's almost... there used to be a time when sport didn't take these stands because of how complicated they end up being. Again, no one doesn't understand. And what I hate is when people deliberately misinterpret a Defence of Australia Day to be an attack on those who talk about the problematic past. That's garbage. That said, if the companies vacate, if the councils vacate, and it ends up just being sort of, we should change the date versus pig-headedness. No, you need to redefine, reposition and recommit.
Well said, Paul. Great stuff. Good to have some of your common sense here. See you back at 8 o'clock.
See you, mate.
Paul Murray live, 8 o'clock.